you trying to get crazy with this shit? Don't you know I'm loco?
So I was Isrock and Rizrock and, iRock, all this stuff. And then I was in my friend's room and I looked up and I saw the board game Risk. And I was like, it had all the same letters and shit. My friend wrote Chance. I'll never forget this.
Oh, shit.
Mark Manuel wrote Chance. And I was like, that's the dopest name ever. Now I think it's a whack name. I would have hated it. So I thought that was the coolest name ever, and I was bummed. And then I saw the board game Risk, and it had all letters of iRock and all this shit that I was fucking around with. So I said Risk. So I started doing it. I hated it at first. I thought it was corny. Now I think it's the best name in the fucking world. You know?
What's happening, everybody? This is Bobby Ruiz, a.k.a. Bobby Tribal. And once again, it's time for that Lower Left podcast without Johnny Be Good, without DJ Artistic. So just because this dude popped in the building today, I had to do it. He was down to do it. So with a little help from my friends, we figured this one out. And yeah, here we are. So this we've been busy. We've been doing all kinds of stuff. So we haven't been able to really record anything. But once again, I'll let you know that we do our very best to provide quality content and guests, So just to whatever that's supposed to mean, you could take that for whatever. But I've been traveling, been busy. Johnny's been busy. Artistic's busy. The dude who's sitting here at my desk is really, really busy too. One of my best friends in the whole world. I've known this dude probably like 30 some years. We've got a great history together.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time, dog. From our friendship goes across the board with so many things, not just as a friend with so many things in common, but I learned this clothing business with this dude. Like this is somebody that he learned the clothing. We learned the clothing business together. He taught me shit. I taught him shit. We fell on our faces together. We got up together. We made a shit ton of noise together. You should see his face. He just said, "Man, it's a shame we don't have cameras in here." Not today, because I don't know how to set them up. And Johnny's doing Johnny thing today, like work. But the history with this dude, we'll get to that. But you've probably heard of him. He's an icon. He is truly an icon, not just in the art world, the LA scene in general, the music scene. He's a graffiti king, without a doubt, internationally known. He's a dad, and gonna be a dad again.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and he's a shit. This dude, my brother Risk.
Yeah, boy.
And he's a foe too. He's a foe too. But yeah, man. And it's usually when he comes around, he's super busy. And we pop in and out, or I'll see him here and there. He's got something going on, and I'm not able to nail him down. And then he's got a signing at a gallery here in San Diego tonight. So we went and had lunch, and then I'm like, "You down to the podcast?" And he said,
"Yeah, boy."
So, anyways.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. You're one of my oldest friends and
What
best
is
friends.
that? Old.
Well, accent on the old, and then
yeah. It's a trip. Like before I knew this guy, I knew who he was. I knew what he did. His reputation and his name, and he was that name you'd always hear. Just being around, I guess I'd call it but I won't call it the hip hop scene or the graffiti scene, because we were involved in so many different
scenes.
Southern California lifestyle scenes. But first time I met him in person, it was in 1992, I believe, and we were both doing the ASR trade show for the first time. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is how I remember it. So we had our little booth I think we were like a 10 by 10 and you were a 10 by 10 and we were probably like maybe 50 feet away from each other. He was up against the back wall and I was kind of on a corner, and I had my crew and he had his crew, and we knew that we were kind of doing, you know, similar lifestyle, kind of some shit that didn't fit in at ASR, that's for sure. Like
we stood up.
We were two sore thumbs. And being that we had that in common, I think we were just kind of like, look at what's up with those dudes. And he was like, and I think him and his crew were doing the same thing. It wasn't a negative thing at all. It was just like, who are those dudes? And who are those dudes? And then one of Kelly's homies comes up and he walks up to our booth. And, you know, like I said, we were sore thumbs, and he asked me for a catalog. And I go, well, let me have one of your catalogs and I'll give you one of our catalogs. And I wasn't just going to give it to him. And then, you know, the guy went back and reported to his boss, a.k.a. Risk. And Risk walks up, and from that point, we became great friends. Like that's where we exchanged catalogs and started chopping it up. And then I think it was about maybe 2 weeks after trade show, he invited Carl and me up to his studio. And we pull up to the studio, and he had an amazing studio. We were still, he was ahead of us there. Like, he had a really, really nice spot in downtown LA. And we pull up, and he lost his dog. He lost his dog, Trouble. And Trouble was just a puppy, and Trouble had been kidnapped.
Yeah, man. The homeless people got him.
And then it's like, hey, get in the car. We're going to go look for Trouble. And I jump in the car. We were youngsters, like, you know.
Well, we had the homeless gangsters over there. So they were like, you know, county was right there. They'd get out and shit, and they'd come through there, and it was all kind of shit going on down there. But yeah, I remember when they got Trouble, we posseed up. We got Trouble back, though, right?
Yeah, you had I tripped out because you said, get in the car, and I get in the car, and you got like a 9mm on the seat. I was like, all right, so it's this kind of search for the dog. And then, yeah, you got, I think they tried to hold him ransom, or what happened?
Yeah, man, they were holding him ransom. They got him, and they wanted some money, and we went down there and did what we got him back. And it was a crazy time down there. It was a crazy place. As much as it was like, you know, desolate down there, it was crazy, right? Because like, it was like, kind of like, I'd walk around with like, I used to wear board shorts and have a gun in the back of my board shorts and walk around downtown and no problems at all. You'd never see anybody.
And he had like long, light brown hair with like blonde in it from being in saltwater. I think it was saltwater.
I was surfing a lot at the time.
Yeah. Either that or you were dyeing it real nice.
Yeah, man. I surfed a lot. My first graffiti name was Surf. I used to write Surf.
Tell us about that.
Well, that was the shit, bro. So I used to, like, I went to Uni High, and I used to surf, and I was sitting at Uni High, and this kid came in, and I was drawing my desk. I was drawing this big wave, and it said Wipeout or some shit. And he goes, what do you write? And I'm like, what? I don't write. I draw pictures. And he's like, what do you write? I'm like, I draw pictures. And I was like, damn. We almost got in a fight. I was like, are you fucking stupid, motherfucker? I draw pictures. I don't write. What the fuck are you talking about? And he told me about the subculture of writing in graffiti. And, I mean,
what year was this, you think?
83, 84, something like that. Oh, 83, because I started doing graffiti in 83. Yeah. So with that quickly, bro, I learned about graffiti in a crash course in like 5 minutes, right? He was like, we call it the subculture this, your tag. What's your tag? And I'm like, oh, I guess my tag is surf. I write the word surf, whatever. I think I said Wipeout at first. He's like, no. And then, so I said surf, and he's like, that's your tag. And that day, long story short, I went and I stole some spray paint. He told me he had to go rack some paint and all this shit. I went to the hardware store, I stole some spray paint, came back, waited for it to get nighttime. It was like dusk. I fucking jumped the fence. I did the piece. It was terrible. The worst fucking piece you ever saw.
What was it?
Big Risk. Surf piece. It was like just big white letters outlined in red, and it was just ugly. And in my mind, I had this piece, and it was going to be so dope, right? And I had an arrow on the F, the whole fucking toy shit. And, I thought it was going to be the shit. And I remember just being super disappointed and being like, damn, that shit's kind of hard. Not hard is good, hard to do.
Yeah.
Like, And I was like, the next day I came back, it was like 300-400 kids like staring at it going, that shit's dope. And I'm like, what? And I was like, what do you mean? They liked it. And I liked all the attention, but they had never seen any New York style graffiti before because it was all just cholo writing and stuff, right? Just gang writing, one color stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe some filled in old English letters and stuff like that, but this was like clearly different.
Where in LA was it?
It was on my high school, on the bungalows.
In what
Uni
city?
High, West LA.
Uh-huh.
And so I did the piece and whatever. And I just came back every day. Like every day since that day of my life, I did graffiti, right? I bombed my high school hard. Like it was
Writing surf.
And I had my surfer buddies with me looking out for me. And we had this cat and mouse game, and we'd whistle and be on the roof looking out, and they could never catch me. And when they started beefing up the security really, really, really tight, I broke into the school. So I'd be inside the school painting the halls. I called them locker rockers.
Shit.
Yeah, man. So I paint the lockers because they couldn't buff them, or it took them a while to figure out how to buff it. And I'd be inside painting, and they'd be running around the whole school looking for me. And the next day they'd come to school, and I was inside. So it's this whole thing. But eventually, I was the only like white dude in there getting arrested, like on the regular, you know. So I was a problem child, so to speak, I guess. So it was pretty easy for them to figure out who was writing surf all over the walls. There's only like 5 of us that surfed in the whole school. The school's a busing school. So Uni High was a busing school. So they bust all these kids in from South Central and everywhere else. And like, you know, they had like fucking like 100 white kids, and then everyone else was from all the different neighborhoods and everything. And like, we stood out, and fucking the kids that surfed really stood out. And I got busted so fucking quick. It was like they just busted me. And I changed my name to Risk, and then they tried to bust me a bunch of times, but they couldn't, because then I was like kind of smart. I had all these fake names like Cajun and all this other stuff that put decoys up and like let them catch me do a tag here and there, but not the real shit. That's how it all started.
I didn't hear. This is the first time I've heard of Cajun. I like that.
Yeah, man. So Cajun from the beer nuts.
Well, Kelly has roots in Louisiana. Like some of your family roots are in Louisiana. Right?
Yeah. So I was from New Orleans, and then a couple years into it, like I think.
And we just had that style lunch right now. Every time we come to San Diego, we end up having like Cajun style. What did we had? We had crab legs and crawfish and corn, and Kelly's famous for his seafood. What's it called? Boils, gumbo
and the crawfish boils.
Crawfish boils, yeah. So anyway, so you're Risk now. So went,
Risk, yeah. So
how'd you come up with that name?
Oh, okay. So the Camaro IROC Z, right? Like that was out, you know, that car.
Yeah.
So I was like,
those were bad.
Yeah. So I was ISROC and RISROC and IROC, all this stuff. And then I was in my friend's room and I looked up and I saw the board game Risk. And I was like, it had all the same letters and shit. And my friend wrote Chance. I'll never forget this.
Oh shit.
Mark Manuel wrote Chance. And I was like, that's the dopest name ever. Now I think it's a whack name. Like I would have hated that name. But like I thought that was the coolest name ever, and I was bummed. And then I saw the board game Risk, and it had all letters of IROC and all this shit that I was fucking around with. So I said Risk. So I started doing it. I hated it at first. I thought it was corny. Now I think it's the best name in the fucking world. You know?
It's all right.
Yeah. That's how I started.
Okay, so then you started writing Risk.
So I started writing Risk, but then...
But whoever told you about the graffiti thing, right? So obviously they knew something about...
They were from New York. This kid came and left like within as soon as he got to school, he was gone. Like I don't know what his story was, but he came and left. But since he showed me that, I went looking for New York graffiti all over LA, right?
Did you find it?
Yeah, I did. So I went to Venice Beach and looking for it, and we had like Zephyr had a piece at Venice Beach, and Brim from Tats Crew had a piece there. Some other people, people that don't. A lot of people know LA graph, but they don't really know that there's a lot of other shit that really was really influential. Like Brim piece was really influential. Yeah. It was in a doorway. No one ever saw it, but I saw it.
Shout out Brim, dude.
Shout
Everybody
out Brim,
remembers Brim, yeah.
But and then there's all this stuff, and then Soon. So when I went downtown, I found Soon's pieces, and Soon was this dude that was just clearly way better than us and just had style. And we didn't know where he's from, New York or LA, whatever, but everyone assumed he's from New York because his style was so much more elevated than ours.
And it was that color, huh?
And it was just fucking dope, So I met Soon, and then we started hanging out, and he put me on to all kinds of shit. He just showed me, like, just the ins and outs of what to do and stuff, and I became in Young Lords. It was his crew were legit. And then that was it, man. It was just, we kept going. Then we made our own crew called West Coast Artist.
What year was that?
West Coast Artist came out like about 85 probably.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
and shout out motherfucking West Coast Artists, because that's the legendary shit right now. I mean,
yeah, man, that's some heavy hitters.
Yeah,
in that
that's
crew,
the
man.
heaviest. Some of the heaviest.
If you look at the people in that crew, from Cartoon to fucking Abel to fucking Retina to fucking man,
is it Mir WCA now?
Mir.
Yeah.
There's a lot of heavy hitters. Coffee. There's just some fucking dope ass motherfuckers in that crew, you know. Yeah. And then there's all the homies. There's Sonny Boy, and there's so many dudes. And then the newer dude Zane and fucking a lot of motherfuckers.
Zane, shout out Zane. Zane's the homie. Yeah, they're all the homies.
And then Minor with the original fucking all city dude for LA. There's all kind of shit. Rival, rest in peace, was the fucking
that started
style
in
master.
83?
No, 85, I think.
85?
Wow. Yeah.
So I remember going, I don't remember the year, but Sabrina and I would go to Hollywood to go to some of the trendy shops in Hollywood. On Melrose, there was a spot called Posers, Let It Rock. We'd go to the soap, what's it called? The
Soap Plant.
Soap Plant.
Jesus de Luz.
La Luz de Jesus, the galleries and stuff like that. And that's when I first started to see your shit. I would see it with her, and I remember what caught me was, like you were saying earlier, all the full color stuff, all the bright colors, because we're used to like 2 colors, block letters, single colors, silvers and blacks, and rarely would you see any color at all. And then besides that, the line work, like real skinny lines and multicolored fills and 3Ds.
The cutbacks, like we were like kings of cutbacks, making that shit crisp.
Wasn't there Dante in there somewhere?
Yeah, man. So Dante went to school with me. He went to uni high, and he was kind of like, Dante was already over graffiti. Like when he got there, he was like, "Oh shit, graffiti!" Like he was like, it was like kind of a curse to him. Like he had so many graffiti stories.
Did he used to do those characters, real blocky looking characters?
Dante did everything. Dante was the fucking the man. Like he had style for miles. He just was over it. He wrote Brisk from AOK, and later he introduced me to Reese and all these dudes, and he was just kind of over it. But like he had it in his blood, so he loved it. So we went to Belmont Tunnel. And painted that place, like some of the first pieces on the tunnel, like on the walls. I mean, Handu and Shandu had the first pieces for sure.
Kicked it off, pretty much.
Well, they had the first pieces when you go down there. They had that shit on lock already. Like right when you go down the main wall, they had already done that. But we went down to where they were playing soccer and shit like that, and hit those walls when they're raw cement. We saw the photos when the walls were raw cement. So it was like early. And I remember we went down there one night and they shot at us from the bridge, and then Dante's like, fuck that, let's go at like 4 a.m. when it's just getting dusk or some shit. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, he didn't want to go at night and shit. He wanted to go during the day, and he wanted to see, and he's like, we'll get there before anyone wakes up and shit. And we did it. It was crazy. It was fun, but it was kind of funny, and then after that, it kind of sat for a long time, and then people started going there and became Belmont,
the infamous.
Yeah, because the place was so dope. I remember those pieces when I saw the Handu and Shandu and whatever those pieces were on the front wall right there. It blew me away, man, because I found that place at night one time in the middle of the night, and I walked down there thinking of a good spot to paint, and I saw that, and I was like, holy shit. Those pieces, I don't really remember. They could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it had like chains in them and shit. It was like dope-ass pieces. But, yeah, so those are there, and then we started hitting other walls. And then, we didn't go back there for a long time, and then it became the fucking Belmont Tunnel, legendary battles down there. Slick and Hex and WCA and K2S and all kinds of shit like that, and then all the neighborhoods there kind of controlled that place. Rockwood and all those dudes were up there, and that was kind of their hood. And I was lucky enough to, I was rivals with K2S, but down with the homies, so they kind of gave me kind of a pass, and I never got jacked or anything. I would go down there and do my shit. And
you stood out though, huh?
Oh,
I would imagine, like, even anywhere we would go, you would stand out.
Yeah.
Like, because you always carried yourself like yourself. Like you never, your style was always unique and different. And he was that white dude that stood out amongst a bunch of us ethnic kids. Not to say there wasn't other white dudes, but you always had your long hair and your own style. And even with Third Rail, like what you did with Third Rail. And for those of you that don't know, Kelly was the founder of a legendary streetwear brand called Third Rail. And Third Rail started around the same time we started, I believe, like late 80s. And that's pretty much how him and I became friends. But that was a whole other trip.
Yeah.
It had an extremely unique style. There was nothing else like it. There still has been nothing else like Third Rail. Third Rail was not like tribal in the sense where it was like, Kelly being a graffiti writer and some of his style would peek through and you'd see his influences, but he did shit like, I'm going to say like pimp shit mixed in with a little bit of Western shit, surf shit, gangster shit. Like it was all over the place. And
well, we had collections, so we had the Pimp and Ho collection, the Tiki collection, all these different collections, You have to understand that we had a surf line, we had a snowboard line, and then we had a street line. It was like we were trying to be way bigger than we were. We were like, we thought we were fucking Levi's or some shit. We were like, oh, this division, that division, this division.
Yeah, yeah. But the style, nobody matched what you were doing. Like the furry button-up jackets and shirts, and like the pimp looking coats and
it was wild, man. It was wild. It's crazy. I have some interns now, some young dudes, and they're super in the clothing game, and chrome hearts and all kinds of stuff that they're into. And I didn't really talk about clothing with them, right? I just kind of let them stumble across it. And then they found out Third Rail, and they asked me if I knew about this brand. I kind of laughed. And then eventually they figured out what was going on. And then I brought out some old stuff, and they fucking flipped. And they started showing me all these sites and shit. And they buy and sell that shit. And they're buying all this old school Third Rail shit for a lot of fucking money.
There's a kid here in San Diego. He worked here for a while. And he would come up with all kinds of third rail stuff.
Crazy, bro. So these kids are bringing it to me, and they're like,
Flames
hey, can you tell me
shit.
if this is real or not? And I'm like, yeah, that's real. And they go, when was this from? And I tell them, they all want the stuff from the early warehouse, is this the early warehouse? I'm like, yeah, you can tell. I tell you by the labels, the woven label, this and that. And so they're buying and selling the shit, it's crazy. And I get like the itch every once in a while, but
it goes away.
Yeah.
I could feel you. But if you talk about someone that I think you put the style in Kid Rock, like what that dude was wearing, and you really helped him, I think, develop his style. Not to say that he didn't have style or his own kind of style, but you added a lot of style to him, and then you also worked with you dressed a lot of the same bands that we were working with. Like I think the first time I saw Korn was at your warehouse, like at an event you had at your warehouse, and I think that was probably the first time. But there's a story I always tell people, like we both in those early days, our shit blew up in our face.
Yeah,
like we I'm sure that first show you probably did as much as I did, like as much as Carl and I did at ASR, and we walked out of those shows going like, how the hell are we going to produce all these numbers, all these items, all these samples that we sold?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to produce these? And then going beyond that, we started, wanting to be hot shots and make, shorts and jackets and button-up shirts and all this shit. And you introduced me to some people like Bijan and some cut and sew people in LA. And I remember walking down in the Garment District in downtown with Santa Fe, and what was that? The number street? Was it 4th, 9th?
I don't know.
Where we'd go buy fabric.
Yeah.
And we'd go into these fabric stores, you and I just all stupid, feeling fabric. And
acting like we knew what we were talking about. Like,
hey, is this cotton?
But we did know a lot of shit, because like we could tell if the denim was like, kind of worn out and like dry rot and shit like that.
But we started learning, I think. But I remember you telling me, if it catches fire, it's
polyester.
Yeah, or and then I personally started learning the difference between like polyester.
Yeah, if it catches
cotton,
fire, if it's polyester, it doesn't catch fire, and smoke or something
like that. Like,
and we'd light the corner in the fucking place, like.
Yeah. But they knew us down there because we'd go down there and drop some bread. Like we'd just be like, all doing all kinds of stuff.
We were all cash, so they loved it.
They did, and then just buying all the weird shit that they had,
all the closeouts. Yeah. They're like,
brushed denim and all kinds of stuff like that. And your pops taught me a bunch of stuff too.
Yeah.
Learning from Binks and just kind of growing and learning and sharing, like someone would pull up to, any of the shows. If it was ASR, 432F, or Magic, it was, our booth was always close to you guys, and people would go from your booth to ours, or ours to yours, and then, sharing customers like, hey, I need some more stuff in my store. Who do I go ask?
Well, that was very prevalent. That was very important for us. We had to build a scene. So, strength for you is strength for me is good. Like we needed customers that wanted to buy our stuff, not just like, oh, that's cute, I'll put one of the shirts in the store. We needed a genre, I guess.
Yeah. And that's what I stand really strongly upon the fact that I personally believe in, I'm down to argue with anybody on this one, that streetwear was born here in San Diego at 432F. Like, we were doing our thing as not just you and I, but there was Louis from GAT, there was Con Art, there was people from New York, 555 Soul, and there was Stash and Futura and Hayes and all these people, and we really didn't have a home. We didn't have a place where we showed collectively together. Even Mark Echo at 432F. Till that show happened, that's where we all really came together. At doing ASR and 432F at the same time, but doing the same trade show parties, trade show events, after show barbecues at the tribal building, and all these things that we weren't just developing that scene that you were talking about, is we were developing a community and friendships, and all those like still intact, like, and we all shared those memories. But streetwear, that's where it went down. Like that's really how it finally
you said community,
came together.
Because like when 432F solidified the brands as being a genre, right? Streetwear, it's like, it wasn't just a little like popsicle at the cash register anymore. It was like a real, like, they had stores dedicated to it or sections dedicated to it, and it was like buyers now had to buy it and stuff like that. And I think that show solidified that we are here now,
Yeah, it did, and it as it just grew, and then they found a place for it. And then after that is when ASR started to really embrace us and welcome us and allow you to do your far out double-decker metal booths with hanging candied sharks and shit.
Looking the other way at a lot of stuff, which I appreciate.
Yeah, and letting us, giving us prime spots. We both had end caps, and we created, along with Black Flies, because those dudes got down too. Like those
100%.
dudes, those homies, and shout out to them. But those dudes would create a lot of hype, and ASR and that whole surf and skate industry changed, and the same way that Magic changed, and later embraced it. But for all these people now and kids that streetwear this, streetwear that, like, these are the roots that we're talking about, the real fucking roots. Like, if there's something else that I'm missing, please let me know, because this is what it is. This was East Coast. This was West Coast. This was streetwear in the early 90s. You know what I mean? And from the West Coast, it was yourself with Third Rail. It was the homies from Joker. It was Con Art was there. There was Louis from GAT. Black Flies, I'll put in that too. There was us. And who else?
Who else did they have? I mean,
Sucker Mike.
Yeah, Sucker
Mike for sure. So there was Sucker Mike, and then later he turned that into 25.
Right.
Shout out to Suck.
But you had Fat Cap for a minute,
Yeah.
And then you had all these 187, Huda, whatever fucking line.
And then Dies came out a little bit later. Dies 1.
Yeah, I mean, it spawned a bunch of lines, right?
But to be 100% real and honest, we did that.
Yeah.
That was, and even with Third Rail, like, you developed a style with that brand that changed a lot of shit. Like, you were mixing all kinds of shit.
Well, I was really strong in the crossover shit, bro. Like, I wanted to make sure that, like, I was definitely against culture vultures, right? So I just wanted to be true to myself and kind of like put my own twist on shit. Mm-hmm. So as much as I liked hip hop, I liked punk rock. As much as I like this, I'm a little bit redneck. You know, all this kind of shit mixed in together.
We both have ADD.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's, and I tell people that, like, that's what made tribal is my inability to focus on one thing. You know, I was the same thing as I grew older. It changed, but same thing, like different music genres, different, you know, I've always been into lowriders and doing graffiti and checking out all kinds of art and tattoos and all that kind of stuff. But I think we went into a market or a genre that didn't exist. We you know, like who was doing anything similar? But then again, it's like, where were we finding our influences? Like I was going to ask you with your graffiti earlier, like back then, like besides what you were seeing on the wall, how are you finding those influences? Like, how are you looking at this East Coast style?
That's crazy
graffiti?
thing, bro. Because for me, you know, my style is very derivative of an East Coast style, right? My letters were very derivative of New York style. That's all I had to look at growing up was New York graffiti. We didn't have any graffiti writers in LA. When I'm talking, like, I had at one time that I knew about 10 writers or 11 writers of fucking Los Angeles when I started doing graffiti, and I couldn't find dudes to do graffiti. I mean, breaking came in, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of dudes trying to do graffiti, but that was it, bro. So I didn't have anything to look at but New York. So, you know, later I always get like, I'm not bummed out, but like I wish I was like, you know, the Sabres, like all these dudes in my crew, like Sabre and Revoke and the generation right below me, they came in and they fucking developed their own style. Like they came in, they embraced the Chicano writing and the New York or graffiti that we were doing, and they made a fucking new style, and they fucking came on. I consider, you know, at one time, for sure, LA was on top, you know, taking it to the next level. Sabre with these monumental fucking pieces on the LA River, and Revoke with all these crazy styles and hitting all these crazy spots and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to sit here and give out mad shout outs to my crew, but mad shout out to my crew, you know?
Yep.
MSK, AWR, WCA, all these crews that I've been part of have pushed the boundaries in graffiti beyond. And, you know, I look at that and I kind of wish I was like fucking of the mindset to have created that LA style, you know? Like I kind of get bummed out by that.
Homie, stop it. Because at the end of the day, when people talk about graffiti on the West Coast, there's two, in my opinion, or what I hear in the conversations that I see, there's two kings, like the two kings of LA letters and graffiti are Chaz and yourself.
No, don't get me wrong. I love everything about it, bro.
But you could see in your letters even today, you could see that Chicano influence if you really look at it.
Oh, yeah, man.
You can see those streets of LA in your letters, because your letters, yeah, they have that graffiti feel, and the graffiti, you know, you could paint anywhere in the world and know that it's like,
well, they went from dancing to fighting, right? My letters came from like the hip hop.
Explain that.
It's true, bro. Like
I've heard you say that. That's cool.
Because I looked at my letters when I used to draw them, like when I was a kid and stuff. I wanted my shit to look like breakdance, I guess, right? I looked at my letters; they were funky. They were like dancing and shit, all this movement. And then as I started like running around the streets a lot, they became more like soldiers, right? They became like all arched and clicked one way, and that became from the Chicano writing, right? That was that influence, and that's where that's where I came from. But I love that whole shit, that whole fucking development of style is like intriguing to me, so fucking intriguing to me, like the whole thing. And now even in my fucking gallery work, I break down the graffiti so much in some of the stuff because that's a whole nother side. If we start talking about art, it's crazy. But like my graffiti is different than my gallery shit is different than my public art is different. You know, they're all different. But I do have elements of all my stuff together. And like people said, you know, sometimes I didn't want to do graffiti for galleries. I went through a period where I didn't want to do that. That was going to be my personal artwork. But I wanted elements of that in there. So when people see the circles and the lines, and I'm like, yeah, there's my graffiti. And they go, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, the circles represent the most rudimentary form of graffiti, which is, you know, the cloud background or the bubble fill-in. And the horizontal and vertical lines represents weights and balances of a font. So that's a broken down graffiti, you know. So even that to me is intriguing to, you know, the letters to me are fucking like amazing, you know, and where they come from and how you could at one time, you know, I don't know about now, but at one time I could look at anything in the world and tell you, oh, that's Germany or that's this or that's this. Now it's so crazy with the internet and shit that, you know, people can do, you know, Japanese dudes can do the best cholo writing I ever saw and, you know, all these different shit that's crazy. But yeah, that's really crazy to me how the heritage traveled through the lineage of letters, you know?
But that was. I mean, I'm gonna go back. Like that was I'm gonna say it was an advantage and a disadvantage that you had because you were almost forced to develop your own style based on the influences that you had, and you were that was a lot more difficult, I think. But you established yourself and your style by doing things that way. You know what I mean? So,
but what's so crazy about that is because when people see my stuff, like I was thinking. I was doing. It's kind of like Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stones, right? They did all this stuff, and they thought they were doing the blues musicians from New Orleans, and it sounds nothing like that. But it's the same shit with me. I thought I was doing all this New York graffiti, and all the New Yorkers like that ain't New York. It looks nothing like that. I was doing all these different colors, these colorful colors, using neons and all this shit before that shit was cool. And that shit was like people were like, "What the fuck is that?" And I remember going to Henry's studio. Henry Chiffon that did Subway Art, the Bible,
I would have loved to have seen you that day.
Oh, bro. You have no idea. I met, my idol, which was Lee. I met Lee and I met all these dudes. But anyway, I was at Henry's and, he didn't know who I was. And he's there and all these dudes were trying to clown me. And they're like, Henry, what do you think of LA Graffiti? And he goes, well, I don't really know much about it, but I go get some photos and I got this guy Risk. He's doing some really interesting thing with colors. And I was like, my head like just blowing up, And then Lee came walking up and I was on the stoop and these dudes like, Lee, what do you think about LA Graffiti? He goes, I don't know, but on the way here I saw like 3 of that dude Risk cars running from LA my dude
head is just
bigger than the fucking building.
Yeah.
And then so it was cool. But yeah, so I guess, when I'm thinking I'm doing these things, I did have things that I was doing that were different, with the colors and shit like that. And it turned out to be kind of crazy because Roger Gassman gave me one of the biggest compliments of my life. He was reading some publication and he wrote something like, I forget how he worded it, but he was like, people might think Risk is typical graffiti or something like it, but people don't realize Risk made typical graffiti.
Yeah.
I don't know how he said it, but it was very elegant. It was very cool.
Yeah. Roger has a way with words.
Yeah.
But so going back to the New York thing, who would you consider your biggest early influences and your standouts from the East Coast?
Oh man, for me it was Lee and Futura. Those dudes. Different reasons, but this, Lee was kind of like I don't even know how do you say it, man. Like his car, he was a painter that wasn't really a graffiti artist, so to speak, but he did graffiti. He painted with, I don't know, whatever. He actually talks about this a lot. And then Futura obviously is just so fucking different, and it was like cool. And those guys just, to me, always stood out. Like they were just something special. But there's so many of them that I appreciated, like from the T-Kids to the fucking Dondi to, all the Does is, my man.
Yeah.
It's so many.
Does came out here and made his mark too. Shout out Does Green.
And then the guys that took me to paint all the trains, Ket, Reese, Vin, Ghost, those dudes took me at a time when the trains were super hot and ending and let me get my fucking feet wet and get in there and bomb. And so many, met so many good dudes along the way, Wayne and all these dudes and Sess and fuck. You
see how he sidestepped that question really good.
Which one?
No, you got it. But you did say it was Lee and Futura. Those were the.
Yeah.
How about okay? So the thing about Futura, well, both those guys, but they were able to take their art respectfully into the galleries and move into
and crash
into the art scene.
There's so many different
Those too,
but there's so many different things I could tell you about that. But I remember seeing a Crash, an advertisement for a Crash art show in like Playboy magazine, and I was like, "Fuck, I want to do that." Like that shit was crazy. But like, I got to do a mural with Futura and Lee at Mocha when we did the Mocha show, and so many times in graffiti, I just felt like my life's dreams had come true. I've been so fortunate to do so many crazy fucking things. But yeah,
we've done some cool shit too.
Yeah,
but I think I get like that too. I think there's so much love and admiration for a lot of these artists. Like for me, some of my personal favorite standouts out there, the Tats crew. Obviously, Doze Green is one of my all time favorites. But then again, what we drew inspiration from out here.
Yeah, man.
Not just.
I mean, Keith Hang. I met Keith Hang at the art center, and like his art, I didn't really, I didn't dig it at the time. But what he did with art, I fucking.
You met him?
Yeah.
No shit.
We were going to do a mural together. Slick was going to do Slick actually did some stuff. Slick did some stuff.
Shout out Slick's got some amazing stories too, dog.
Oh, well, OG Slick, that was my partner for years. You know, we went on to do a ton of shit together. But don't get me started with him. Just his contribution to the characters of graffiti changed the whole game of graffiti.
Yeah.
You know, just with his characters, he changed graffiti's game.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, there's so many dudes. And Cartoon, you know, that's my brother. And Abel, man, there's so many dudes.
I'm gonna throw Zodak in there too.
Zodak,
Zodak was a straight beast too from down here. But he came a little after you guys. But what he was doing down here, and then obviously Dies with the Letters. Those were the guys from San Diego that were really making noise early on. The guys that I would meet, and you know, Zard and so many cool cats from down here. But Zodak was kind of like the biggest standout, I think, the straight beast that we had down here, and
Super
Dies with his Letters
dude.
too.
Yeah.
But so then you were busy making yourself a fucking graffiti icon, a streetwear influencer, borderline rock star. we did a lot of shit, bro. We would do a lot of really cool events. We'd go on cool trips. We did a bunch of traveling. Then it's like it was time to kind of switch gears, I guess. And you were able to transition, and I know I'm skipping over a bunch of shit, but you were able to transition yourself really well, probably better than most, into the art world. Like the would you call it fine art? Would you call it contemporary art? Would you call it modern art? Would you call it, you know, because you've done pieces that, like, let's say the things that you were doing in Beyond the Street, the Sharks, for example, doing I don't know what you would call the cop car that you did.
Conceptual art, contemporary art.
So you're kind of sick. Like all these things, like, and people, you are known for doing the unexpected. You don't want to be, you've always been that guy. You don't want to be predictable. You don't want to be like, oh, Risky's going to come with this. No, you don't know what the fuck Risky's going to come with, because he'll bring some shit and just out of left field that no one's expecting. I think either you do it intentionally or that's just who you are. But that transition, how did that start? Like going from, like, you're working with some of the biggest galleries and art dealers in the world, like internationally. Like you're not just, you know,
that was crazy because when Slick and I won that world championship thing in 91 or whenever it was, I don't know when it was, 89, I don't know whenever it was, but we went there and we did that thing.
This was in
London, started in Bridlington in England, and we won the world championship. We came back, and it was really cool because we put LA on the map and all this stuff. But with that came these random collectors that wanted to buy art, and I didn't know shit about selling art. So they'd come to me and like they want a canvas, and the first thing out of my mouth was 10 grand. Like, how much is that? 10 grand. How much is that? 10 grand. How much is that? 10 grand. So, you could come probably to my studio and get a truckload of shit for 10 grand, or you come to my studio and get a canvas for 10 grand, or you come to my studio and get a tag for 10 grand. Everything's 10 grand.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I had no fucking idea.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but the thing is, they're few and far between, right? So that's going on. And I'm like, cool, that's cool. And then I started being like, fuck that. I don't want to sell my graffiti. So my graffiti was just for me, right? So I was like, no more graffiti for sale. If I do art, it was like this mixed media stuff I was doing. I have one piece left, and DJ Muggs has it, and he's saving it for me, and I appreciate that, Muggs. Thank you. I love you. And he had, I don't know if he did it on purpose, but he saved this piece for me, and it's the only one that I have of that stuff. But I was doing these color washes with this fake brick and these lights with bubbles going up them and shit like that. And it was like, that was my art. And if you wanted to buy my art, that was it. And I wouldn't sell my graffiti. So I went on for that, like that for years. I just did my graffiti. And I had a secret little gallery underneath Third Rail that me and Cartoon and a couple people used to paint in. And that was it. And I'd paint on the streets a little bit here and there. And that was it. And that was my graffiti. And then everything else was different. fast forward to 2000, I don't know, 6, 7, whenever fucking that was. Charlie, my second oldest daughter, turned 1. And I went out in the backyard and I did a piece on a trailer for her. I said Charlie, and I did her name, and that magical graffiti dust got on me, and I was like, fuck, man, I miss this shit. This is what it's all about. This and that. I was traveling 90% of my life with Third Rail. I got on the phone and I called my partners in Canada, and I was done. I said, I'm going to be a stay-home dad. I'm going to stay here with Charlie, blah, blah, blah. They had a lot of circumstances with Third Rail going on where we were at the crossroads of revamping the company or shutting the company down. We had just did like a huge, I don't know, a $50 million deal or some shit with somebody, and he got a rare blood disease, and the deal was going south and this and that. And we had to revamp the company, and I said, I don't want to do this. Either I want to like get bought out or you guys buy me out or what. I don't remember the terminology, but I had my little epiphany. I had my little box of money, and I thought I was set. I had my little, I don't know, $2 million.
It's a trip how quick that goes away. Huh?
I had my little $2 million, and I was like sitting at home, and I was going to raise my daughter and paint and this and that, and I'll start selling canvases. Every life's going to be great. So fast forward, the economy crashes. I start losing my properties, my investments, my house in Mammoth, all of my shit, and now my house is on foreclosure. And I'm like, holy shit, what just happened?
Oh, that pad.
Yeah.
The one in Hollywood, off of Robertson?
No, I sold that one, and then this is the one in Thousand Oaks.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm like, what just happened? My little box of money's gone, and I lost all this shit, and now I have to sell my art. So I go to Roger Gassman, and I'm going to do an art show real quick, make a quick, $250,000. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, I'm just going to do a show called 26. I've been painting 26 years. I'm going to do 26 letters of the alphabet. It's going to be a big deal. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to, each canvas is like 16 grand or some shit like that. And I'm going to make all this money. And he's like, why would they be 16 grand? And I'm like, because I saw my shit for 10 grand. And he goes, what do you sell for 10 grand? And I go, I sold X, Y, and Z. And he goes, is it documented? Is it in an auction? Is it this? Is that? What gallery you sold it? I'm like, nah, it's just people that pull up and pay me, And he's like, yeah. He goes, I don't think it's going to work. Like, let's start with like 1 or 2 grand. I'm like, you're nuts. So let's start at 4 grand. So I'm like, cool. We'll start at 4 grand, and then I'll just make a quick 100 grand, and let's call it a day. So we put this show on. It's a legendary fucking show at Bergamot Station, Track 16 Gallery. Mm-hmm. Thousands of people show up. It's a fucking huge ass thing. I don't sell anything, bro. I think I sold a canvas to Brad Pitt and somebody else. Like 2 people bought canvases or some shit. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? This is like, I'm giving them away. They're 4,000. Roger's like, a little different when you try to sell art, bro. And then I was like, oh, wow, here we go. So basically, to answer your question, is like starting from that point on. So I consider my career that show. So it took me 2 years to start really selling artwork for that price, for like 4 grand. So after I started selling it, getting in the groove of things, and started really focusing and learning, the stuff started going up, whatever, how much ever started going for 10, 15, 16, whatever it is. And then I was selling art, and I was in the business of selling art. And then I started really focusing on my art and my career. And I graduated USC in fine arts, and I didn't think I learned anything there, But then looking back at all my art, I was like, oh, shit. Like, all this stuff that I do with the contrasting colors and the pyramid theme and all this shit is all shit that I learned subconsciously. And I started doing art. And then, my mixed media stuff was my gallery stuff. My graffiti was still my graffiti stuff. And my public murals were color-filled paintings, so to speak. They're just a graffiti palette to evoke emotion. They're not really like my artwork, so to speak. And then that's it. I'm going to use huge broad strokes because I'm skipping over a lot of stuff. But fast forward today, I'm working on some real painterly canvases that are graffiti push and pull, deconstructed over, not worried about doing the whole letter, parts of the letter, this and that. And like, they're the most painterly fine art thing I've done ever, and the closest thing I've done to graffiti for my gallery work. So it's kind of funny. I'm going on 40-something years of whatever this is, and I'm just starting to show graffiti-esque stuff in the galleries, and super happier than I've ever been. But it's kind of funny how life takes you on these journeys of the stuff that you would never do, and then where you become and where you find solace and peace and happiness, and
Yeah.
crazy.
And you're one of the most collectible graffiti / artists out of LA right now, I think. But on another note, you're known for going really, really big, and you kind of told me a story about that. Like, you probably did. I don't know. I've seen some stuff that you've done, and here, even here in San Diego, you've done entire buildings. You've done huge, 15-story buildings, top to bottom, full left to right. Like, how did you went from letters to doing these huge art pieces on buildings with graffiti-esque influence or vibes? Like, how did you get into that? Like, people call them, sometimes they're washes, or there's what explain that whole style.
Well, I call it color field paintings. The color field paintings. It's kind of funny because I have, I think, the Northern America world record of a building. It's like 12 stories. I don't know, 960 gallons. There's a whole hospital, in Canada. It was really dope. We did it. But those paintings came about because I was painting for the Olympics in, I think, 2011 or whatever that was, with Shepard Fairey, Ron English, Tristan Eaton, Saber maybe, and myself. And we were there, and we were painting for the Olympic Committee, this and that. And I got there, and I think Shepard and Ron were at the table, and I walked up to the bar, and I'm like, "What's up, guys?" This and that. And I think Ron was like, "Hey, what are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I guess I'm gonna risk piece or something." And he's like, "Oh," and they looked like someone farted or something. I'm like, "What?" And Ron's like, "No, we love risk and everything, but you could say other stuff." And I'm like, "Well, I'm not a culture jammer. I'm going all nuts. Like, I'm not here to do that. I'm not a political artist. I just want to do da-da." And he goes, yeah, whatever you want to do. And then I went up in the room that night, and I was like, fuck that dude. And I was like, what's he talking about? I started thinking, I said, well, actually, let me think about this. I'm supporting my family.
You were upset because they were thinking you were going to be predictable.
I don't know what it was.
And that's not you, bro. Like, that's what I was saying earlier. I think you love to be unpredictable. Like, well, you like to surprise people where people are going to go, oh, shit.
Well, no, I don't know. But anyway, I went up to the room, and I started thinking about it. I was like, well, dude, if I'm actually here to get paid, to support my family, to do all this stuff, I guess I need to at least have a reason for what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. So I started thinking about it, and I started really wanting to come up with a crazy concept, maybe to be unpredictable, like you're saying. So I'm sitting there like brainstorming, what am I going to do now?
There you go.
And I started thinking, what made me the most happy in my graffiti career, art career, and it's driving down the freeway the next day after I did a burner on the freeway, right? And that feeling I got, and I started realizing and thinking about it. 90% of the people going down the freeway can't read that shit, but they get that same feeling. Like, that's dope. Because I've been in the car, people are like, that's dope. What'd it say? And I'm like, it said risk, motherfucker. And then, so I wanted to see if I could evoke the same emotion without characters or letters. So that's how the color field paintings came about, right?
Oh, nice.
So I came back down the next day, and I told Ron, I'm like, you know what, man? Fuck that. I'm not going to write anything. I'm just doing this color washes, and I want to do this and that. And I'm trying to evoke, and he goes, yeah, you're a color field painter. No, I said, I'm a color field painter. And he goes, yeah, exactly. You're a color field painter. I'm just looking at him. He goes, yeah, I needed you to say that. I needed you to come up with it. You needed to realize that. And he goes, do yourself a favor when you do an interview, blah, blah, tell me you're a color field painter. Don't tell me you're good. He just schooled me.
Ron English?
Ron English. I was with him last night. Shout out to Ron. He had an amazing show.
Oh, Jim was at that show. I don't know if he was there last night. Was that when, was Mir there too?
I didn't see him. I came on the way here. I stopped over there.
Oh, Jim was at that show 2 nights ago. Thanks for the invite, Jim. Just shout out. Okay.
And then so I go in, and he schools me that quick. I'm like, damn, right on. And that's how my color film murals came about. So that's how that all came about, just to evoke emotional color. And I went to Miami, and I experimented with it, and all these like really dilapidated places. I remember painting the mural in Miami, and these dudes got killed underneath the scaffolding and shit. And it went from like they wanted to kill me to like them cleaning up the area and singing and thanking me for painting. And like I was like, wow, this really works. It's It's a thing that works in society. You could change and evoke emotion with color. You know, you could do this, and that's how those started. So like my mural work became color-filled murals, which was different than my gallery work. My gallery work was mixed media stuff. I call it metallic tissue, my DNA, my imprint on society as an artist. These are cans that I cut up that I've used to paint illegal graffiti or museums or galleries or whatever. I had license plates for One Love, different races, colors, creeds, signs because they're metal, hitting metal, like to paint freight trade and stuff like that. Being a Southern California artist, car culture is super important to me. So the lowriders were very important in my career. So a lot of candy car paints. Surf was very important in surfing culture. So the surf resins. So those are all part of my gallery work, which is mixed media stuff. And my graffiti was my graffiti. And until now, you didn't really see all those things mixed. So now I'm at a point where I'm like, fuck it. I'm gumbo. You know, I'm from New Orleans. So
gumbo.
It's all mixed in the pot now. So that's where it's at. So that's how all that stuff started, bro. It's just like all these things had a reason. People don't understand. Like one thing I am very big on is the didactic of your artwork. You know, you have to have a reason. It's got to mean something. It's got to be true to you and your heritage, your culture, and all these things. And my stuff just kind of flows with it. You know, people always ask me what's next and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know, man. Life's a hell of a fucking journey. Like, it's been a great ride. I don't want to know what's next. It's almost like the ride's over, you know?
Yeah.
I just go day by day and just bigger, better, more. And then another thing about painting the buildings that you're talking about earlier, that's a graffiti mentality, bro. Like, we're like fucking cockroaches, bro. You just spread. You just want more.
Yeah.
And you want to go bigger, 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 bigger. So I think when I did the color field paintings, it went from like, well, the wall's cool, but how would it be if I did a whole building? You know, no. I would do it for all four sides.
I mean, I would see you at the top of these buildings on these crazy fucking hanging off the side of the building, like on scaffoldings or cranes or whatever. That shit looks scary as fuck to me.
Yeah, man. Like I just went down the one on Market Street that we did years ago. It's really faded, but I think it's a beautiful fade. I want to paint some new stuff on top of that. But long story, big shout out to Sloan because he passed away recently, but he helped me do that mural.
Yeah. There's a lot of different, like you were saying earlier, mediums that you've incorporated into your work. A lot of obviously metal, not just, you know, for people that aren't familiar with Risk's work beyond, you know, like he was saying, just graffiti letters and seeing some of the walls that he's done is what he's done with these the sharks and the cop car and license plates and a lot of neon. You've done a lot of really cool shit incorporating neon.
That comes from the people saying that graffiti shouldn't be in galleries, and I was like, yeah, it should be in galleries because they said, you know, graffiti has no boundaries and it shouldn't have four canvases or four walls or whatever. I'm like, bro, you don't get it. In a gallery, you could create your own environment. Like, I don't have to fucking paint the fucking highlight. I could put neon highlights on it. That's how it all started. You know, I just thought, like, always deconstructing boundaries, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of depth to this guy. I mean, there's books on him and things like that. I know that you've been fortunate to work with a lot of artists, and you actually painted with a huge rock star who became a good friend of yours. You want to talk about that?
Who?
Joe from Aerosmith.
Joe Perry?
Joe Perry, yeah.
Yeah, Joe's great. I mean, I have so many friends that are musicians that are great artists.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and Dave Navarro, you do.
Dave Navarro, Billy Morrison, Robbie Krieger, Ronnie Wood, Bernie Taupin. There's so many dudes. We've showed all these dudes in the gallery, by the way. We do a show called Beyond the Stage, which is all rock stars that paint, right? Yeah. And all these guys have been in the show, and I've collaborated with all these guys.
Ronnie Wood?
Ronnie Wood is an amazing artist. Shit.
I've seen some of his paintings.
Yeah, he's amazing. But yeah, so there's a lot of these dudes that are amazing artists. But you were talking about Joe Perry?
Yeah, you took him out bombing. Huh?
Yeah, so we went bombing. We went bombing, and he caught the bug, bro. Like, he was into it. He's like, he hooked.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, let's go here, let's go there. And I'm like, what do you guys want me to do? And he's like, him and Steven wanted me to announce the tour, like world tour on this date, on blah, blah, blah. Like, it was going to take a block to write all this shit, right? I'm like, bro, that's like a lot of writing, you know? Like, they wanted me to write this let love rule, let rock rule, and the date and all this shit. And I'm like, well, let's just start with some Aerosmith pieces. So we go around town. I'm doing some Aerosmith pieces. I'm catching some A's with these wings on some roll-up doors and shit like that. And Joe's completely fucking into it. He's like, let's go. And then I'm like, all right. And then they start with this thing that they want to do. And I'm like, well, do you guys have a wall? And they're like, no, we'll just, go find one. I'm like, you can't just fucking roll up and just bomb a wall. And why not? I'm like, because you'll get busted. And they go, who's going to bust you? I'm like, whatever, bro. I'm like, hey, you guys got to bail me out and let's do it. And they said, cool, they'll bail me out, no problem. They go, we're not going to arrest you. Don't worry about it, though. So I start bombing this wall. Sure enough, cops come up. I'm like, here we go. And Joe Perry and Steven Tyler walk up and they just wave to the cop. The cop's like, what's up, guys? And they're like, oh, we're announcing our new concert, our world tour. They're like, right on. Yeah, rock on later. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yep.
And they just roll off. And so I do the whole wall. And it's like, whatever. So all of a sudden the next day, TMZ calls and it's like, hey, can you talk, for a few minutes? I'm like, yeah. So they want to know about the night before. And I'm like, oh, shit. What did I say? What did I don't say? And long story short, the detective saw it. The detective calls the building owner. They're going to come arrest me and stuff. And then the building owner's a fan. And he goes, well, I happen to know how to get in touch with Risk. And I'm a big fan of the band. And I'm not pressing any charges. And if I want Risk to come paint my building, I'm sure I'll call him. And I'll be a gentleman about it and come buff it,
Nice.
And he called me and said, listen, I'm not going to do this, but I'll let you know they're coming after you. They're going to try to have the fire department come here. And they were doing some bullshit to get around and get me some kind of felony thing because I caused so much damage and the city had to pay for it. And then they'd have a warrant for me even if he didn't want to press charges. So we were able to go handle it before they could do that. And he whatever. So then, long story short, Joe's like, fuck it, let's go painting. I'm like, bro, you can't write Joe Perry.
You want to write his name on shit?
So he tells me, he goes, oh, I got a tag, come get me, this and that. So I'm all right, cool. So I go pick him up. By the way, we're in a limo, driving around a limo bombing, right? I had my limo's bombed. Completely bombed. I have a Rolling Stones tongue on the front of it. It says politely go fuck yourself on the back of it, whatever. It's this thing. And me and Joe driving around bombing downtown LA, right? So he goes, I go, let's see your tag, bro. Let's go. So we're painting. And he's an artist. I guess he did the first sketch for the Aerosmith logo and stuff like that. So he gets out and he starts doing the Aerosmith, wings and shit like that. And he goes to sign it and he writes Joe P. And I'm like, that's your tag, bro? He goes, yeah, they can't prove it.
That's a shit.
Yeah. So then they wanted to go paint some trains and they never got to make it. We were too busy. But him and Steven had me come to the press conference and I did a big thing and they let me sit up there with them. And Slash was there too. And we all did a signing and took photos and stuff like that. And I always wanted to do a train kept rolling.
They were sitting next to you, bro. They were sitting next to Risk. That's what I say.
They always want to do some trains, and then I can't tell you, but somebody must have done some of those trains and sent some pictures. They liked them.
Yeah, and then I see you've been hanging out with Dave Navarro a bunch, doing stuff with him. And tell us about your studio a little bit, and if you want, and I know you have a very, I don't even know the right words, or how if you even want to talk about your amazing compound, but your studio, you still have the studio where you sell art and show art and all that? Yeah,
well, no, it's okay. So the compound, we call it the compound, right? So it's my pad, and I got a studio behind it, and then
it's more than just a pad, yeah.
Yeah,
like two, like it's a size of like 4 pads.
Well, it's a couple pads next to each other.
Yeah.
And then it's got some studios adjacent. My biggest compliment? One of the biggest compliments? I got a couple good compliments.
Okay, let's hear
them.
I wish you guys could see his face.
Forbes did an article on the compound.
Yeah.
And they compared it to the Warhol Fun Factory.
Yeah, nice.
And I thought it was a really cool article. And they were talking about the people that come through. Dave Navarro, they were talking about.
Yeah.
And Billy Morrison, who comes a lot. Billy, I just did a video with Billy and Ozzy just recently. And I think it's
Robbie Krieger from
the
Doors?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Shout out to Robbie. We're working on some stuff together right now.
No way.
I got a collaboration show coming up with Bernie Taupin at the end of this year, and I'm really excited about that. I've done some collaborations with him before that I think are really cool. And, he's, everyone knows who he is.
One of my favorite collaborations I've ever seen you do. All these beautiful collaborations are real sick. Love them to death. But when you and Cartoon did that 3 or the 3rd,
yeah,
and the golds with the red, and he airbrushed where is that? I know you still have that.
Yes, it's on a wall. It's on a wall in my gallery. So to answer your question, that's the compound, and then we bought a building down the street that's a gallery now. So it's a permanent private gallery. It's not really open to the public, but I have some of my favorite pieces in there. Like that piece is in there. It's not for sale, but that piece is hanging in there, and some other stuff. But that's the studio. That's the gallery, and then the studio is separate. And the studio's really cool. We have a music studio in there now because Mickey Avalon just recorded his record in there. We had some great musicians. Josh Fries. I have too many musicians to list. Came in there and recorded and hang out and play. And yeah, that's that. It's cool. You got to come up, man. You haven't been up in a long time.
I know. I feel bad about that, and he busts my balls every time I see him. Yeah, it's out there, but I definitely need to make time to do that. But I know you're constantly changing shit ever since the beginning. Like when you got the pad, even when you had your studios, you were always changing stuff, building stuff, like designing stuff and just remodeling things. And how many, I know since
when I was younger and stuff, I always lived beyond my means and all this stuff. And, I had 13 cars and nowhere to park them kind of shit. You know, like it was like everything was backwards,
I know some people like that.
Yeah. And I had to build all these things and stuff. And now that I have all the stuff, I'm fine tuning it and making it actually really work to its potential and where it should be. And it's quite a fucking, I have to say, I got knighted. I painted Michelangelo's studio. All these things.
Wait, can we talk about? Okay, so I think you showed the way you told me this story. I think you came back and you showed me the story, and you're kind of down on one knee, and you're in the middle of a church in Italy. And I was just in Rome like about a month ago. Shout out to Franco Vescovi and my brother Mako out there, Kindamo, all the homies out there. But there's You got like this sword on the top of your head, like they're. I'm like, what's going on? You were in a suit,
and I threw it West Side.
Yeah, dude. So, can you tell us what happened there? Like, what happened in Italy? Like, how did this whole thing go down? Like, what happened?
All right. So, but anyway, what I was just gonna say that, like, my whole
you're not gonna get away from that story, though, dog.
My whole life stream come together. So it's finally come together. Everything's getting fine tuned. But okay, back
night.
So I go to Prince Medici from the Medici family is an artist. He's a connoisseur. He's a collector. He's all these things.
Italian. He's like a Italian royalty.
Yeah, he's the prince. He's Prince Medici. Okay. So he a gallery I work with calls and says Prince Medici is in town. He's interested in some stuff. Can we send him by the studio? I'm like, yeah, I'm having a party, but tell him to come on by. So he comes by, and it was one of those parties, like one of those parties.
Okay, yeah, one of those.
And barbecuing a fucking feast, and just a lot of fucking lunatics running around. I think there's some Hell's Angels in the background. There's a lot of shit going on, like a lot of shit.
Those, yeah.
But a lot of great, beautiful people and stuff. And he comes in, and I'm like, oh, what's up? And I'm like, this dude looks super cool. Doesn't look like a prince, just looks like a normal dude, whatever. And he's looking around. He starts tripping out, bro. He's like, loves it. So he hangs out all day. He's like, oh man, you build motorcycles? I build this motorcycle. Shows me his motorcycle. And he goes, oh, you skate? I paint skateboards. Shows me a skateboard. And all these things. We become friends. He looks at some of the work and vice versa and all these things. And I don't know what he got. He got what he got. And then we were friends and kept in contact. And he kept going back to like the compound and the people and what was going on. And we help a lot of people. I have people that, I've along the way have come and they've wound up living with me, and interns, and I've mentored, and a lot of stuff goes on there that we help a lot of people, work with a lot of kids, a lot of schools come through there, stuff like that. And long story short, he's like, the more I look into you and this and that, you're like a knight, the knight of the plight, the plight of the knight and all these things. And the way he's describing it, I was like, what do you think? I'm fucking Robin Hood, bro? Like he's describing like I'm, robbing the rich and giving the poor or some shit. And, but I start to realize he's serious. Like, he's like, serious. He goes, yeah, I'm the Medici family. I'm this and that. And I'm going to go have a hearing with the Pope, and I get to, knight X amount of people or submit these many people to get knighted. Blah, blah. I'm going to put your name out there. And I'm like, cool. And I kind of think he's full of shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whatever. I'm like, yeah, man, just send me and my family some first class tickets and we'll be there. Yeah, I'll be on the next flight and whatever. And, it goes on. He's like, well, I had the hearing. I did this. I'm not really paying attention to this, bro. And all of a sudden, these fucking tickets come down. I'm like, this dude's serious. So I send the whole family, like, hey, I think I'm going to Rome to get knighted. And they're like, what the fuck? I'm like, what? So we all go. And then now it's a big thing, right? The camera crew's going and it's a big deal.
Shit, yeah.
So we get there, and I'm blown away, bro. Like, I'm thrown into this history lesson, and I haven't.
Rome's amazing.
Amazing. And I go to the Sistine Chapel, and I haven't like thought about or revisited that stuff since art school, right? And I'm like, whatever. So we go to this church, the Medici, like kind of, it's not a private church, it's open to the public, but people don't really know about it. But like a lot of the high officials go there, and it's like a mini version of the Sistine Chapel where they have Caravaggio, they have all these paintings in there from all these greats, and he's let me see them, and he's like, let me touch them. I'm like, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to. He's like, go ahead, whatever. And all these things that something that I shouldn't talk about. But I'm going to talk about a couple little things real quick.
Yeah.
So they're going to let me paint in Michelangelo's studio, right? Yeah. So he goes, this is the wall I think you should paint. And I'm like, wow. And I go, man, I don't want to do that. That's like sacred, this and that. And I go to the hotel, and I'm like, fuck that. Tomorrow I'm going to go paint that wall. Like, I start getting excited. So I wake up next day, I'm ready to paint the wall. And they go, well, we thought about it. It's probably not a good idea. And I was like, damn, mystical. But they set up an easel for me in the studio. So I was the first person in 400 years to paint in the studio. So his studio now is like this thing, and overlooks the city, which used to overlook the vineyards, but now it overlooks the city, right? And I got to paint in there, and I got to tell you, bro, it's happening again. Every time I tell a story, I get goosebumps. It felt like these rays coming in of light, and it felt like this fucking crazy aura of energy. And I did this painting in there, and I was like, it was fucking weird, bro. I was feeling it, right? And you're sitting, and you're like, damn, this is Michelangelo's fucking studio, you know? And, and they show me the tunnel, and this tunnel goes to the Sistine Chapel, and this is where he used to walk every day to paint. And he'd come back and he had an affair with his lady, and this is where they met, and all this stuff. And the priests still sleep in this room where he used to sleep, right? And there's this bust. And I could tell this one. This is okay.
Right.
And there's a bust of a statue, and it's the bust that he carved of the lady that he had the affair with that was funding the Sistine Chapel thing. And me being a fucking knucklehead, not paying attention in front of the priest, I'm like, so it's like ancient porn because it's like a carved naked bust. And they go, yeah. They just go, yeah. They miss a beat, go, yes, exactly. And they go, you can touch it. And I'm like, well, I'm not trying to, fondle her breast or anything, but let me touch it. So, and they're super cool, and they're super fucking humble and great. And they showed me all these things, these little rooms that went to nowhere that they don't know what they are. And they're just amazing things. And I got to see all this stuff. And the prince took me around and showed me his castle. I painted his dad's car, one of his dad's cars that his dad passed away. He had me paint one of the cars for him. Wow. I saw his childhood home along the coast. We took a trip for a couple days and went down to where all the ladies in the family used to cook for the whole family for a year and make the preservatives. And it was just amazing story after amazing story after amazing story. And some great stories I'm going to tell you off air because it's funny as fuck. But otherwise, it was a great, amazing trip. But I remember looking down, what you're thinking about was I'm fucking sitting there in my suit, and I was drinking at the time a little bit, maybe a lot. I don't know. Yeah. And so I'd been hungover and shit, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like kneeling in my fucking suit. I don't know if I had sunglasses on or something, but I'm kneeling there, and I'm like thinking, is this really fucking happening, man? And I'm like sweating. I'm looking down, and I just remember looking down at the fucking the prince is wearing red Prada shoes under his robe and shit. I was like, this dude's a pimp.
Yeah.
And he's holding his sword above me, and he's doing the whole thing.
That's crazy.
And then I look over at the cameras, and it was just too natural. I had to throw up West Side, throw up the West Side sign.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. We got knighted. And then,
dude, it's okay. So this might feel a little heavy, but maybe you could bring a little bit of light to this. You just said something about when you were in Michelangelo's studio and you were painting that it felt you had goosebumps. Something was unreal in there. There was some rays of light, maybe a little bit, and with lack for a better word, possibly maybe divine, let's say.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was fortunate enough to go to Rome, I don't know, about a month ago with Bobby and Franco and the homies. Mako just showed us a great time. We went to the Vatican, the Sistine Chapel, the Vatican Museum, St. Peter's. I've been to the Louvre a bunch of times, and Louvre's beautiful, and it's not to take anything away from the Louvre at all, but this blew doors, dude. This was like on another level. Yeah. This is another level beyond the Louvre, right? And when you go into not just the Sistine Chapels, but when you go into St. Peter's and you look around, and you as an artist and myself as a curator, artist, designer, whatever the hell you want to call me, Without technology, without computers, without machinery, the ability for them to create and design and place what you saw, not just on the walls, but on the ceilings, on the floors, these, 5,000 pound sculptures hanging off the wall, 80 feet up, and looking at the floors and looking at how it all went together perfectly, flawless, and sculpture after sculpture, piece after piece, looking at Michelangelo's Pieta and looking at all these beautiful art pieces, you're being like, the only thing that I could think is there had to be some sort of divine intervention. Like, this wasn't just done by a man's hand. This is godly. This is like, and I'll say, I believe in God and I believe in all that. I'm not a big, Catholic, or I'm not a Catholic, but, I was brought up Catholic, but I'm not Catholic. But going in there, you feel something that is not of this earth.
Yeah.
Like, you look at what you see in that. I've been to churches, I've been to museums, I've been, I've seen some architecture. Rome was a completely other level. But when you're in there and you're looking like, whoa. Like what Michelangelo
and then
did.
think about this. So the other side to that too is you get to see him as a human, because he's unbelievable in the books, right? And then they see like the Sistine Chapel. You see his biggest art critic that he painted up there, and he has a snake eating his penis.
Yeah.
So you get to see that this is a real dude. He had feelings. He was like, fuck you. He was a rebel. He was all these things. So you see the other side of him.
I heard a lot of these guys were actually, so it just came out because the church with the homosexuality and all that a lot of those artists they were homosexual and they would take them boys. Like there was some, and our guide was telling us this shit, like right in the middle of like the church or in the museum or out in the yard. I'm like, bro, are you supposed to even be talking like this? Like, is that for real? Like, I guess now it's become like the church has known this for years, but now it's like it's becoming knowledge that there was a lot of like sexuality involved in all this and beefs. Like you're saying, he started talking about these beefs, and he would just like an artist would now, and they create these pieces that's a diss to somebody else, and there was some of that. Like he'd get pissed off at the Pope. Michelangelo would get pissed off at the Pope, or he'd get pissed off at somebody, and he would incorporate that into
his art,
his work.
And then also these sculptures, these quarry yards of the marble and stuff like that, they couldn't afford that stuff. They used to break in at night and carve that stuff. So they were the modern graffiti artists in their own right. Can you imagine, like, we break in a subway artist somewhere to paint up a train. These motherfuckers are breaking in, spending years working on carvings that they come back to in the middle of the night to carve because they don't own the fucking marble. That's crazy.
Oh, me, but looking at that stuff, like how intricate and perfect and it's mind blowing. But I think for you to officially become a contemporary within that same structure, organization, institution, whatever you want to call it, that is an amazing, great honor. Like that's beyond some shit.
Yeah, man.
Did they give you a little badge or anything?
I got my robe, and they got a little bottle of whatever the wine, whatever.
Yeah.
But I got the robe, and the robe's crazy.
Hey, do you keep in touch with that dude?
Yeah, we talk every once in a while. Yeah, he's like, whenever he comes.
So basically, he was intrigued.
He's intrigued, man. He's a great dude. He's an artist himself.
Yeah, I've heard you do his accent. You're probably not going to do it right now, but...
Yeah. Bro, I got
when
the
you first tell me the story,
I can't.
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, but that's good. You got that kind of respect for him.
Yeah, to humanize these people, these are human beings, and they go through all the struggles we go through, and they have the same sense of humor we go through. So it's really great to see these crazy, larger-than-life people that they're just humans,
Yeah. And I know you've got some really cool projects in the works. Do you want to talk about any of them?
Which one, man? We got wow. We got a lot of stuff. Currently, right now, I'm working on a toy with Sideshow Projects, Sideshow Collectibles, and we're doing a toy. They do like all the Marvel and Star Wars stuff like that, and this toy got shelved during COVID, so we're just getting back to it. And it's my first toy, and it's pretty cool. It's a lot of everything hangs on the wall. But I'm working on a new book with Roger Gassman. So much shit, man. I don't even know where to start. Just Instagram says it all, or the website, you know.
And the biggest project, I think, is you got a baby on the way.
Baby boy.
Man.
After 4 daughters, a boy. Crazy. This is going to be a wild ride. Yeah, man. So that's coming.
This will be
fifth. Yeah.
Fifth child.
Yeah. I always said that I was going to have a 6-pack, you know, like.
It ain't too late, dog.
Yeah.
You still got it. You still got it in you.
Yeah, man, it's good. Life is fucking good. Life is great.
What do you do? What do you enjoy doing? Because obviously, people know that you're an amazing artist. You could get to hang out with musicians. You love music. You're kind of a, for lack of a better word, again, you're like a socialite kind of guy. You've thrown amazing. You've always thrown amazing gatherings, parties, events. We've done several ourselves back in the day, but what do you enjoy doing? Like when you're not doing those things, like what other hobbies do you have, and what do you enjoy?
Building, man, building.
Cooking. I know you like to cook.
Yeah, cooking, building. But like, you know, like that before we started talking about the nighting shit. That's what I was talking about. Like, I've been building my whole life, all these crazy studios and all these buildings and houses and all this stuff that you've seen me do over the years, from the house in Beverly Hills with the Shark Tanks and all that shit, to actually building my fantasy, you know, home finally, you know, like it's finally like there, you know, like I built all the aspects from the different machine shop, wood shop, metal shop, frame shop, print shop, private studio, private vault, private archive room, all this stuff, you know, and it's like, it's finally there. So my life work is coming to fruition, and it feels great, man. And then I think that it's kind of funny because as I approach these things, I look at my artwork. I'm always looking at my artwork to see where my artwork's at with all this stuff. And it's kind of funny that like my artwork is the first time you'll see my gallery stuff with graffiti. Like it's come full circle from me building these little studios to these big studios to all these elements of my dream houses all over the place, to everything coming together and the work being back to the roots of graffiti. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, but
it's painterly graffiti.
So I'm gonna back up just a little bit real quick. So what was the reason you didn't have the graffiti stuff in the gallery?
I don't know, bro. You have to understand, I've been doing graffiti for so long. So what, 83 to 2000, what's that, 40 years, 41 years? I've been doing graffiti for so long that I went through so many changes with graffiti. I saw graffiti become super cool and accepted, to become super hated, to become this, to become a genre of art. Like my whole plight was, I didn't want to be a graffiti artist. I wanted to be an artist. I don't want people to say graffiti artist. I don't think you have to label people. I just wanted to be an artist. You don't tell someone they're a oil painter artist or a acrylic painter artist, or I just wanted it to be a genre. So I didn't use the word graffiti. Slick and I didn't use the word graffiti in the 80s for a while because it was a negative connotation. The definition of graffiti is applying medium to a surface. We're way far beyond that. And, you know, all these things. Now you get to a point where it's a genre, it's a household name, it's a normal thing, everyone understands it. And I don't have to defend it. Like there's good apples and bad apples. You know, we all have our own morals. Some people don't write on living things, some people don't write on churches, some people don't do this, some people do that. And some people are scumbags, do whatever the fuck they want. So I don't have to defend shit anymore. It just is what it is. And so I guess with me, you know, graffiti is what it is. And I don't have to go to a point where like my graffiti is just mine, not for anyone else, or my graffiti is this or that. It just is what it is. That's my art, man. And so now I guess I'm okay doing it because all these boundaries are gone now. So I don't have to worry about protecting it anymore. And I could live with